There are things people avoid saying out loud, not because they're untrue, but because they challenge comfort zones. Today's topic is one of them. Female psychology is full of subtle, often misunderstood signals. And when it comes to biology, specifically the subject of female nipples, there's a lot more going on than most men realize, not just physical, but psychological. The kind of truth people rarely teach you, but that silently shapes behavior, attraction, and attention. This isn't about shock value, it's about understanding how nature, hormones, psychology, and social influence all collide in one of the most instinctive yet overlooked parts of female behavior. Once you learn what's behind it, the emotional and biological layers, you'll stop misreading signals, you'll stop assuming, and you'll start observing like a man who understands what most don't. Before we dive in, here's a simple question. What's something you once misunderstood about women, but later realized was completely different? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're watching because you value grounded, uncomfortable truth over surface-level noise, include the word valorous in your reply. Let's get into it. Most men think of female nipples purely in physical or sexual terms. But what they don't realize is that nipples are also emotional barometers. The human nervous system is incredibly responsive to mood, attention, and internal shifts. And for women, the nipples are directly connected to the autonomic nervous system. That means they're reactive not just to touch, but to psychological states like stress, anxiety, arousal, and even emotional tension. In other words, what's happening in a woman's mind can, and often does, register through subtle physical cues in her body, including nipple response. Sometimes it's environmental, like cold temperatures, but other times it's psychological. A sudden spike in attention, a surge of adrenaline, an unexpected moment of emotional intensity. All of these can trigger a visible response, not as an invitation, but as an involuntary signal. That's where many men get it wrong. They assume nipple response always equals attraction. It doesn't. It can mean interest. It can also mean surprise, nervous energy, or even social discomfort. The key is not to overinterpret it in isolation. Stoic observation means you never draw conclusions from a single cue. You notice patterns. You match body language with eye contact, tone, tension, and energy. That's where real understanding begins. When you stop viewing physical reactions as green lights and start seeing them as data points, signals to observe, not act on, you instantly separate yourself from most men. You're not guessing, you're reading. And a man who reads the moment calmly without jumping to assumptions becomes the one she feels safer around and more drawn to in return. Arousal isn't always sexual, and in women it's rarely straightforward. The female nervous system is complex, layered, and highly responsive to subtle emotional stimuli. Elevated attention, unexpected social pressure, tension, or focused eye contact can all trigger physiological responses, including nipple erection, even in situations that aren't remotely sexual. Why? Because arousal is often about activation, not desire. When a woman enters a heightened emotional state, whether it's feeling seen, surprised, nervous, or even slightly intimidated, her body can respond automatically. Pupils may dilate, breathing may shift, and yes, nipples may harden. But here's what separates the grounded man from the reactive one. Understanding that this response is often subconscious. She may not even be aware of it happening. And even if she is, it doesn't mean she's trying to signal anything. This is where Stoic awareness matters most. A woman can be in a state of nervous arousal due to context, being the center of attention, having an unexpected conversation, or simply navigating an emotionally charged space. If a man assumes this equals attraction, he risks not only misreading her but also responding in ways that make her uncomfortable or guarded. The reality is, most physical signals are not invitations, they're reactions. The man who learns to observe without interpreting every physiological cue as a personal reflection gains an edge. He becomes steady in moments where others get thrown off or read too deeply into things. That calm presence is rare. It communicates maturity, self-restraint, and emotional intelligence. And ironically, that, more than any reactive move, is what often deepens real attraction. Because women don't want to be guessed at, they want to be understood. Modern culture teaches women to be hyper-aware of how they're perceived. But it doesn't change how their bodies naturally respond. From a young age, women are conditioned to manage how much attention they attract, to dress appropriately, to cross their arms, to adjust posture. Not always out of preference, but out of social pressure. And one of the strongest internal conflicts comes when biology expresses something that social conditioning tells them to suppress, like nipple visibility. That tension creates a unique kind of psychological stress. The body responds naturally, but the mind reacts with self-consciousness. For example, during emotional engagement, public speaking, even during a casual conversation with someone who's fully present, a woman's body may respond involuntarily. Yet society has taught her that if someone notices she's being too much, trying something, or sending signals, even if she's not aware of it, this creates two layers of behavior. The surface performance, how she controls her body, posture, and tone, and the subconscious layer, how her nervous system reacts without permission. Men who are emotionally immature only see the surface and respond with assumption or judgment. But a stoic-minded man observes both layers. He doesn't react to physical cues, and he doesn't weaponize them. He respects them as involuntary and, more importantly, as not about him. Understanding this distinction makes you more grounded and more trusted. Because a woman who feels her involuntary biology won't be misread or exploited around you begins to lower her guard, not because you chased her, but because your presence signals something most men don't: safety, not weakness. Calm, masculine safety. The kind that understands the difference between what's real, what's reflex, and what's worth responding to. Much of female communication, especially in early interactions, is indirect, and that's not by accident. Evolution trained women to be subtle, to test without exposing, to gauge interest and safety without overcommitting. Sometimes those signals are intentional. Prolonged eye contact, leaning in, mirroring body language. Other times they're subconscious, like changes in tone, posture shifts, or even visible physiological responses such as nipple erection. The key insight: not all signals are conscious, and not all of them are about you. This is where most men misfire. They assume that every cue means attraction. But in reality, many of these signals come from a woman responding to her own internal state, not your presence. She might be deep in thought, anxious, or just physically stimulated by the environment, temperature, fabric, emotion. Her body is reacting to stimuli, not sending invitations. And when men treat every signal as a message, they project meaning that simply isn't there. Stoic psychology trains you to observe, not interpret. You don't make a move because of one cue. You don't assume intention based on biology. You gather patterns. A woman may seem flirtatious one moment, withdrawn the next, not because she's playing games, but because she's processing, regulating, adjusting. And if you remain calm and steady through that cycle, she starts to feel something uncommon: stability. Women aren't always aware of what their bodies are communicating. That doesn't mean they're being deceptive. It means they're human. Your role isn't to react. It's to remain present, grounded, and aware. Because when you stop assuming every signal is about you, and instead tune into the whole situation. You stop being like most men and become the kind of man she can actually relax around. And that, more than any bold line or fast move, is what earns genuine interest. Most men make one of two mistakes when reading women's physical signals, especially subtle ones like nipple erection. Either they over-sexualize the moment and assume it's a sign of attraction, or they ignore everything completely and miss key social dynamics. Both come from the same place: a lack of calibrated awareness. The truth is, observation without understanding leads to missteps. But understanding without observation? That's just theory. You need both. Here's what most men misread: that any physical cue equals intent. They see a physiological response and assume, she's into me. But the body doesn't always follow logic. It follows emotion, stimulus, and nervous system cues. A cool room, a spike in adrenaline, a moment of focused attention can trigger visible reactions. And none of those require you to act. A Stoic man doesn't get pulled in by signals. He notes them, logs them, and continues to lead the moment with presence. So what should you notice instead? Context, consistency, energy. Is her eye contact sustained or avoidant? Is her body turned toward you or away? Do her words match her tone? Does her presence feel calm, curious, or guarded? These are the patterns that tell you something real. Not just a momentary cue, but a theme of behavior. That's what a grounded man pays attention to, not the flicker, but the flame. When you shift from focusing on isolated signs to recognizing emotional patterns, you stop reacting and you start understanding. And that's where real connection lives. Not in guessing games, not in fantasy, but in grounded, clear-eyed observation. Most men chase signals. The Stoic man reads the room, and because of that, he rarely missteps, and when he does, he adjusts, silently, confidently, and without needing to prove a thing. Understanding women isn't about decoding every look, gesture, or physical reaction. It's about developing the discipline to observe without assumption, and the self-respect to stay grounded no matter what you see. Female psychology and biology is layered, subtle, and often involuntary. When you learn to see it without needing to own it, you stop chasing signals and start commanding presence. The truth is, most men react. A few respond. But the rarest men of all, they simply observe, adjust, and stay rooted. That's the man who earns trust, not just attention. Because he doesn't need proof to stay composed. He reads the moment without being controlled by it. That balance of strength and stillness, that's what separates noise from value. If this gave you a new lens to see through, drop the word valorous in the comments. It shows me you're not here for empty tips. You're here for mastery. And if that's you, keep walking this path. Valorous exists for the few who choose awareness over assumption and growth over ego.